I used to be confused why this episode was titled Basics, but then just recently I remembered that basic has a slang meaning, and I looked it up in Urban Dictionary, and one definition said basic, used to describe someone devoid of defining characteristics that might make a person interesting, extraordinary, or just simply worth devoting time or attention to. And I thought, God damn, that's not just the perfect title for this episode, it's the perfect title for this whole series. This is a review of the Star Trek Voyager episode, Basics. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know why you should never stop to gather bones right outside of a big cave, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. The idea here, apparently, was to give Voyager a big, dramatic, season-ending cliffhanger to really kick the show into high gear, like Best of Both Worlds did for Star Trek The Next Generation. Did it work? We start out in the quarters of former Voyager crewman Lon Suter. He's the guy who turned out to be a murdering sociopath in an episode from earlier in this season, and Tuvok mind-melded with him to try and tamp down his murder-happy tendencies, and since then, Suter has been locked up in secured quarters where he has apparently taken an interest in botany. Tuvok has come to visit him, and he shows Tuvok a new hybrid orchid he's developed. Tuvok is like, hey, that's great. Can we do our breathing exercises now, since that's the reason I'm here? Suter's like, oh, sure, but one last thing. I'd like to do something for the ship. To make up for the murdering and whatnot. I want to make a positive contribution, like killing Neelix. Ideally without killing anyone. Oh. All right, I'll talk to the captain. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Chakotay gets a message from his obsessive ex, Seska, who is a Cardassian who was disguised as a Bajoran member of the Maquis, who revealed herself as a Cardassian after Voyager got to the Delta Quadrant, and eventually she betrayed the crew and joined the Kazon to become the girlfriend of Maj Culluh, the leader of a powerful Kazon faction, and now she's sending Chakotay a video saying, surprise, I stole your DNA the last time I was on Voyager, and I made a son. Also, Culluh found out, and now he's trying to kill me. Come save your son, Chakotay. Gotta go. There's a weird scene in the captain's ready room where Chakotay doesn't trust the truth of Seska's message, but Janeway kinda sorta talks him into it. Then Chakotay goes on a quick spirit quest where the ghost of his father also talks him into going to help Seska and the baby. Then the entire senior staff is totally on board with risking the ship and crew to go save Chakotay's ex-girlfriend and baby in what is obviously a trap. Chakotay's like, thanks for helping me get us all killed for no reason. On their way into Kazon territory, they pick up a shuttlecraft carrying this guy, Tierna, who works for Seska and tells Chakotay that Seska is dead. Culluh killed her when he found out the baby wasn't his, and the baby is being sent to a colony to be raised as a servant. Chakotay's like, I don't trust this man, and this is still obviously a trap, but let's definitely keep going. Janeway and the rest of the crew are like, we're behind you 100%. Voyager starts passing through a region of space full of Kazon activity, and it's getting attacked constantly by small ships, all of which target the exact same area of Voyager. Gee, that's weird. Think we should turn back since this is obviously a coordinated effort and this whole scenario is a trap? No? Okay, let's keep going. While the crew continues to play into the hands of their enemies, Janeway takes that meeting with Suter, who tells her he has a plan to use his newfound interest in botany to improve the crops being grown in the ship's aeroponics bay. Janeway's like, sounds neat, I'll think about it. And Suter gets a little intense, wanting an answer immediately. And Tuvok steps in and says, hey, she says she'll think about it. This is a tough decision that requires some deliberation. It's not an easy call, like flying the ship into a trap because the first officer's ex-girlfriend dropped some obvious bait. Suter says, I just want to do something for the ship. Janeway's like, oh, you will. The Kazon attacks continue, always focused on the same spot on the ship. Chakotay confronts Tierna about it. Tierna denies knowing anything. They lock Tierna up in secured quarters right next to Suter's place. Chakotay again brings up to Janeway how this is an obvious trap, but they all agree to keep going. Finally, a group of much larger and more powerful Kazon ships arrives and beats the shit out of Voyager. Tierna decides this is the time to treat himself to some toe heroin, so he pulls his needle out of the nail on his big toe and... What, that's unusual? Where do you keep your toe heroin? Your pinky toe? Anyway, he shoots himself up with toe heroin and screams and explodes, which doesn't help things as far as the battle with the Kazon ships goes. Tom Paris escapes aboard a shuttlecraft to go back and get help from a nearby Talaxian colony, and everyone else on Voyager is captured when the Kazon board the ship. Everyone, that is, except Suter, who has managed to escape from his quarters, which were damaged by the toe heroin-induced explosion of Tyrna next door, and the holographic doctor, who turns himself off but sets an alarm to wake himself up later. Culluh and Seska take command of Voyager. Culluh notices how dark the bridge is and orders someone to turn the lights on, which happens. And hey, too bad he wasn't on Star Trek Picard, then maybe I could have seen what was happening at any given moment. Culluh lands the ship on a planet, kicks the crew out, and flies away, leaving Captain Janeway and the others stranded on a planet with active volcanoes and monsters and cave people. And it's all their fault because they're a gang of shitheads who walked into a trap with their eyes wide open, and I have no idea why I should feel bad for them or have any investment whatsoever in them finding a way out of this predicament that they've gotten themselves into. But there's the to be continued, so I guess I've got to wait all summer to find out how these blundering doofuses managed to turn this around. Or at least, that's how it was back in 1996 when this episode originally aired. Now I can just watch the next episode. So that's what I did. Things pick up where they left off. The Voyager crew is stranded on this planet. Janeway has divided everybody up into teams and dispatched them to search for the necessities: food, water, shelter, all the essentials for survival that in a more advanced and civilized society they would need to trade their labor to attain. One member of the crew, Hogan, who has the misfortune to be on Neelix's team, finds a pile of bones in front of a cave. He calls Neelix over, and Neelix is like, "Cool bones, pick 'em up," and walks away. Seconds later, a monster comes out of the cave and eats the guy. Neelix rushes back over like, "Hogan?" Hogan's dead. Meanwhile, Tom Paris is in his shuttlecraft flying to get help from the Talaxians. He runs into a Kazon ship and destroys it all by himself because he's an all-time badass. Meanwhile, again, the doctor's alarm has gone off and he's reactivated himself on Voyager. Seska comes in with the baby for a checkup and the doctor tells her the kid is healthy, but also that the kid is not Chakotay's baby. He's half Cardassian and half Kazon. Whoopsie! After Seska leaves, the doctor discovers that Suter is still on the ship, contacts him, and tells him to get his kill-crazy ass to sickbay pronto. Back on the planet, there's trouble brewing with those cave people. Tuvok has made some weapons so they can protect themselves. He's like, "Check it out, I made a bow and arrow." Chakotay says, "That's great, but my tribe didn't use bows and arrows, and I've never even shot one." Tuvok's like, "Yeah, I know, the bow is for me. I made you a sharp stick." The cave people capture Neelix and Kes, so Chakotay walks up to their camp and says, "Hey, can I have them back?" And the cave people let Chakotay take them back. God damn, this is easy. He didn't even need his sharp stick. Oh, wait, never mind. The cave people start chasing them and Tuvok has to pop up on a ridge above them and shoot one of the cave people with an arrow. That'll teach them. Chakotay, Neelix, Kes, Tuvok, and the other crew members who came with them run into a cave just like the one where Hogan was killed. The cave people are smart enough not to follow them into a monster cave, so Chakotay and the gang try to find another way out and sneak past the monster, who is conveniently asleep at the moment. Then one of the dipshits in the group slips and almost falls and wakes up the monster, so they have to run for it. Fortunately, some of the others have lured the cave people away from the entrance to the cave, so everybody runs out and they trigger a cave-in to keep the monster from following them. On Voyager, Suter has been sneaking around sabotaging things, and he's killed one of the Kazon, but it's been a while since he killed someone, and it gives him a major head rush, so when he gets back to sickbay, he just needs to take a minute. Also, Tom Paris has managed to talk the Talaxians into saving Voyager's ass, and he sent a secret message to the doctor telling him to make sure to do a technobabble thing to help him out. Suter leaves, we cut away to something else, we cut back to sickbay, Seska comes in, accuses the doctor of sabotaging the ship, the doctor takes full credit, and Seska shoots a computer panel to disable the doctor. Suter comes back, tries to activate the doctor's program, but instead a pre-recorded message pops up telling Suter to do the technobabble thing Tom Paris mentioned earlier. Tom Paris and the Talaxians show up and start attacking Voyager. Suitor sneaks into engineering with a stolen Kazon rifle, kills all the Kazon in the room, but gets shot in the back by a not quite dead yet Kazon. He pushes the button to do the technobabble thing, then falls down and dies. The technobabble thing does whatever it was supposed to do, and a bunch of stuff on Voyager explodes, and all the Kazon and Seska are knocked out. Paris and the Talaxians start to board Voyager. Seska is apparently really badly hurt because she crawls into the ready room where her baby is and dies. Culluh walks in, sees that Seska is dead, seems kinda bummed about it, but then takes the baby and fucks off. The Kazon abandon Voyager. Back down on the planet, the volcano is erupting, which leads to the Voyager crew and the cave people making friends. Also, Samantha Wildman's baby is sick, but one of the cave people sticks some leaves on the baby's chest, and that fixes it. Thanks, cave guy! Voyager flies past overhead and lands. Janeway says to the cave guy chief, "That's our ride, we've got to go. We're leaving behind some bows and arrows and big sharp sticks if you want them. Normally we don't share advanced technology, but just this once I think it's okay." The crew returns to the ship. Tuvok says a prayer over the body of Suitor. The doctor says, "You would have been proud of him, Tuvok. He killed a bunch of people, but he felt really bad about it." And then he pushed a button. Chakotay pulls a sheet over Seska's dead face. On the bridge, Janeway orders Paris to set course for the Alpha Quadrant because apparently all the damage sustained from both Suitor's sabotages and the Talaxian attack, which defeated the ship and forced the Kazon to abandon it, has already been repaired, and away they go. The end. Okay, look. I'll start with the good parts. The cliffhanger itself. Just the situation, the predicament in which the characters find themselves as that to be continued fades in at the end of part 1 is maybe the most audacious cliffhanger Star Trek has ever done. When your show is about a bunch of people flying around on a spaceship, you can't get much more, oh shit, how are they going to get out of this one, than having bad guys take over the ship, strand the good guys on a planet, and fly away. As a writer, your job is to give your characters conflicts, obstacles to overcome. That's the source of drama and suspense and story. J. Michael Straczynski describes it as chasing your characters up a tree and throwing rocks at them. The closing minutes of part 1 of Basics definitely does that. The heroes are totally defeated and left in a seemingly hopeless situation. It's a genuinely terrific cliffhanger. The problem with Basics isn't the cliffhanger, it's everything that happens before and after. Maybe I'd have a more positive opinion of this episode if, during the first half, we didn't see that it is totally the fault of Janeway, Chakotay, and the rest of the Voyager crew that they wind up stranded on that planet at the end of part 1. Seska's message to Chakotay about their supposed son is an obvious ploy. It's bait even the most easily fooled fish wouldn't bite on, and what's worse, Chakotay knows it. He knows they're all flying into a trap. He expresses this several times throughout part 1. He doesn't trust Seska. He doesn't trust Tirna, the Kazon guy they pick up along the way. But neither Chakotay nor anyone else ever says, "You know what? This is ridiculous. What are we doing? Let's turn around." Not only Chakotay, not only Janeway, but everyone else on the entire ship is seemingly totally on board with this rescue mission that is definitely not a rescue mission. There's a scene in the briefing room which would have been the perfect time for someone, anyone, to raise their hand and say, why are we doing this? Even if what Seska is saying in her message is true, which it definitely isn't, why should we risk our ship, our crew, and our allegedly limited resources that we should be conserving for our long journey home to save her and her baby? It would be one thing if someone said it just so Chakotay or Janeway could try to refute it. Come back with some, "We have to act to save the child. The child is an innocent life no matter what." But nobody even brings it up. They're all totally on board and supportive of this laughably boneheaded plan from the beginning. Not only does that make every single person in that briefing room look like a fool I wouldn't trust to park my car, let alone operate a spaceship, it's also really boring to watch. One of the justified knocks on TNG was the lack of conflict between the members of the Enterprise crew. It's mostly true that the gang on Picard's Enterprise got along. That was a Gene Roddenberry thing. He thought that evolved and enlightened 24th century people would have grown beyond interpersonal conflicts and would be able to resolve their differences maturely and peacefully, because I guess he didn't give a shit if the show he was making was any good. TNG eased up on the everybody always gets along rule as it went on, especially after Roddenberry died, but even in season 1, with the show at its blandest and most basic, I don't think things were ever as dire as they are in this episode of Voyager. If the Enterprise D was about to fly into enemy territory to rescue Commander Riker's evil ex-girlfriend and alleged infant son in what was obviously a ploy to lure the ship to its doom, somebody on Picard's crew, probably Worf or Tasha if she was still alive, maybe even Geordi, would at least propose that it's a really bad idea so the other characters could try to defend it. Instead of that, instead of a conversation, or dare I hope for an argument, where characters take definitive positions on what they should do and disagree with each other and express emotions and show some personality, we get the Voyager crew taking turns describing how they're going to create sensor echoes or holographic ships to fool the Kazon during battles. How gripping. Television drama at its finest, truly. The writing of early TNG was shitty, but it wasn't that shitty. Or at least it wasn't shitty in that particular way. It was pretty bad. And to be fair to this series, I don't think Voyager is ever this bad in this way again. In subsequent episodes, we see the crew doing reckless, dangerous things which they should know better than to even try, like forming an alliance with the Borg. But at least there's disagreement among the crew, rather than instant consensus. The parts of the first half which aren't spent reminding us of what dipshits our heroes are taken up by foreshadowing and laborious setups for the cliffhanger and the eventual resolution of the cliffhanger. We're reintroduced to Suitor, always nice to see Brad Dourif on my TV, but the impact of his presence is diminished by how obviously his fate is being telegraphed. He's been working with Tuvok to keep a lid on his violent tendencies, and he's almost there, and he wants to do something to help the ship. Then the Kazon take over, and Suitor is the only Voyager crew member other than the Doctor still free and on board. What do you think he's going to do to help the ship? Is he going to counsel the Kazon to follow his example and embrace nonviolence? Do you think that's it? There's a similar problem with Tom Paris. He leaves the ship right before the Kazon takeover to go get help from the Talaxians, so we know before the first half is even over how things are going to resolve. Tom's going to rally the Talaxians to come back and help him take back Voyager. And that's exactly what happens in part 2. Hey, here's an idea. Maybe it's not so easy for Tom to get the Talaxians to help him. Maybe it takes more than a single conversation where one Talaxian guy makes a token objection before agreeing to help. Maybe Tom needs to do something desperate or underhanded to get the Talaxians to help. Maybe he needs to make a sacrifice or burn a bridge or something instead of, "We need your help. Don't worry, I have a plan." The scenes of the Voyager crew stranded on the planet have the same problem. Janeway and her people face token obstacles which are easily overcome. They need food, water, and shelter. Okay, they find a cave to shelter in during the opening minutes of part 2. Chakotay makes a solar still from the uniform of Hogan, the crew member killed by the monster, so that gives them water. And Janeway finds some nice juicy bugs under a rock, and later Harry and B'Elanna find eggs and some wild vegetables nearby. So that solves the food problem. Hey, why were we even worried? The conflict with the nearby cave people. They abduct Neelix and Kes, so Chakotay just walks up and takes them back. That doesn't resolve things. The cave people chase them into, appropriately enough, a cave, but eventually the volcano erupts and the Voyager crew and the cave people start working together, and hey, that conflict resolved itself. I love when that happens. Unless I'm watching a TV show where it happens and it's lazy as fuck. The problems with basics are the same as the problems that afflict Voyager as a series. These people are in a supposedly desperate situation, yet they never seem to be in real danger. They never struggle. They overcome obstacles and resolve conflicts in ways that never require more than minor, easily forgotten sacrifices. There are opportunities in this plot for drama and conflict. Chakotay having to convince the rest of the crew to go help him save who he thinks is his son from Seska and Culluh. Tom Paris having to persuade the Talaxians to put their asses on the line to come help his ship, the stranded crew having to actually struggle to survive and fend off and or make peace with the cave people on the planet. Shit, Chakotay and Seska. It's not great, but they actually have a history and an ongoing conflict, and this whole thing is kicked off by Seska calling Chakotay for help. But Chakotay and Seska have exactly one scene together in the entire two-part episode, and it's when the Kazon have boarded the ship, and Seska taunts Chakotay with their son, and Culluh reveals that Seska has told him that the child was conceived when Chakotay violated her. Chakotay's like, huh? And that's it. That goes nowhere. None of the Chakotay Seska stuff goes anywhere. It means nothing. It's just an excuse to have the crew of Voyager fuck themselves in part 1 so they can eventually get unfucked in part 2. Multiple potential sources of meaningful story occur naturally throughout the episode as a result of the predicaments the characters find themselves in, but the episode capitalizes on none of them, and instead, in part 1, we mark time until the cliffhanger, and in part 2, we mark time until the rescue. It's rote, it's flat, it's dull, it's pointless. It's everything that made me not give a shit about Voyager. At least Basics marks the final appearances of Seska and the Kazon as recurring villains, though Seska does come back in the following season in the form of an evil hologram. The Kazon were the first attempt by the creators of Voyager to create ongoing alien antagonists for the show, and I applaud the effort, but the Kazon never really worked. I didn't give a shit about their overly complicated made-up culture, or their conflicting factions, or their whole Klingons but dumber vibe, and I was glad to see them go. I wish the creators of the show had come up with something better to replace them with than recycling the Borg ad nauseum. I thought Species 8472 and the Hirogen both had potential, but they got addicted to them TNG leftovers, didn't they? Perhaps the most depressing part of this episode? Written by Michael Piller. Not only that, it's Michael Piller's final television writing credit for Star Trek. One of the best and most influential writers of the TNG era of Star Trek, showrunner of TNG from season 4 on, co-creator and original showrunner of Deep Space Nine, co-creator and original showrunner of Voyager, the guy who made Ben Sisko a baseball fan, the guy who wrote The Best of Both Worlds for TNG, for Christ's sake. And the last Star Trek he wrote for TV is this. According to Piller, he titled the episode Basics because he knew he was leaving the series and wanted to show the writers and producers who were staying behind to continue the series that, for the series to work, they had to adopt a back-to-basics approach and make Voyager a Star Trek show in the classic mold first established by Gene Roddenberry, a show about characters confronting fundamental issues, a show that tells stories that are about something. That's a commendable goal and a good idea creatively. Star Trek, any Star Trek show, should be doing those things, but where is any of that in this script? Sure, the characters face fundamental obstacles once they're stranded on the planet, finding the necessities, avoiding attacks from a dangerous animal, coexisting with potentially dangerous native people, but the episode doesn't engage with any of those obstacles in a meaningful way. The characters aren't challenged or changed by them at all. It is nice and very Star Trek that they eventually make peace with the cave people instead of having to fight and defeat them with violence. But is the episode actually about that? No. Sadly, unless his teleplay was drastically rewritten before it was shot, and I don't think it was, Piller's intended farewell message to the franchise never seems to have found its way onto the page, much less the screen. It in no way diminishes the man's positive contributions to the franchise, which are immense. But talk about ending on a sour note. Both halves of Basics were directed by Winrick Colby, a fine director who directed a bunch of Star Trek and who does a perfectly acceptable job here. None of this is his fault. A couple of the scenes in part 2 where Suter is sneaking around the ship are well staged. The darker lighting aboard the ship and in some of the cave scenes on the planet is more interesting than the show's usual look. That's about all. It's a competent job of directing a lifeless script. As I said at the beginning, the intention here, Michael Pillar's intention specifically, was to give Voyager its own best of both worlds moment. A shocking cliffhanger that would simultaneously hook the audience and push the series to new creative heights. What we got was an episode that does have a compelling cliffhanger, but very little of interest happening on either side of it. Instead of doing anything new or exciting, Basics mostly treads water until it gets to the end, when Voyager, the ship and the show, flies off on the same course it's been following all along. Those are my thoughts on Basics. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as we close out this batch of episodes about the ship or space station being hijacked. For the last episode of the batch, I'll be reviewing one from the 3rd season of Star Trek Enterprise. That episode is called Chosen Realm. See you next time for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.